Washington Journal continues.
Welcome back. We are joined now by Pearce Godwin. He's the founder and CEO of the Listen First Project. Pearce, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Tammy.
And your organization looks at bridging the divide amid political polarization. Tell us more.
Yes, ma'am. Listen First Project serves as the backbone organization for the movement to save our country from tearing apart, including 500 organizations in the Listen First Coalition who are bringing Americans together across divides. I'm a guy who loves this country. I feel blessed to be in the United States of America. It is indeed an exceptional nation. We've got such a rich variety of backgrounds and beliefs from sea to shining sea. It's indeed a great experiment. It's unprecedented. It's never happened in the history of the world. And as is painfully clear, it's not easy. So like most folks, I'm deeply concerned about our future. This toxic polarization has convinced us that our fellow Americans are our enemies. That is a lie that threatens to destroy us. And if you're watching this and like me, you want peace in your family, you want calm in your community, unity in our country, and solutions to our problems, I want to give you a new sense of hope and opportunity to turn down the heat and find a way forward together.
Pearce, you said that your organization is connected to 500 others, this coalition. Who is part of that coalition? What's the mission?
Yeah. The mission of the Listen First Coalition is to pursue social cohesion and collaboration to overcome this toxic polarization I'm talking about, this demonization across differences. There are many nonprofit organizations, there are libraries, there are universities, there are research institutions, all having dedicated themselves to this mission critical work for our country. I found over the years that more and more American heroes are dedicating themselves to saving our country from tearing apart and making America stronger by defeating toxic polarization. I want everybody watching to know about their efforts and to be a part of them. Urban Rural Action brings together community members across political, racial, and generational differences to build relationships, to dialogue, and to take concrete action to make their communities safer. 92NY Share Our America helps people build the foundation for change in their community by forging a lot of unlikely relationships. Braver Angels just launched the American Hope campaign, very timely to get us through this election season. Common Ground USA is going to be hosting Love Anyway Feast the week after Election Day to remind us of the power of community and offer an alternative to this divisive us versus them politics that we're caught in right now. And another example, Raft for America. This one is particularly innovative and adventurous. We've got red-blue pairs of everyday Americans and elected officials who are getting in a raft together this summer. They're tackling the rapids on some of the most beautiful rivers all over the country. What a vivid demonstration of the fact that we are so much stronger and can be so much more successful pulling together than pulling apart. I'm excited to participate myself next month on the Nantahala River here in North Carolina. Those are just a few examples of the efforts taking place across the Listen First Coalition. There's several more that I'll share as we go on.
And you mentioned the efforts that are being made, but we are still seeing a political polarization in the country. What is your assessment of the current situation, and what are some of the challenges of overcoming it?
So much of this is based in our human psychology, right? We've got this wiring that has served us well over millennia to identify threat, to retreat into what's called our in groups, to get around people that might look like us and think like us. Those are some primal instincts. The problem is they've been activated against our fellow Americans. This sense of fear and threat has been activated by so many factors across our environment. I've seen a list of 50 causes of toxic polarization, and the answer to each one of them is yes, it is a wicked problem. It is a problem that has no easy solution, but indeed it starts with us. I'm terribly concerned as we advance through this election season that we're beginning to see signs of political violence. Political violence is a heinous symptom of toxic polarization. That lie that our fellow Americans are our enemies can lead to political violence and threatens to destroy our nation. Look, I think violence is beneath us as Americans. It's weak. It's self-destructive. Everybody loses when we turn to violence. It's so important that all of us stand united against political violence. And indeed, the overwhelming majority of Americans want to coexist peacefully with their neighbors, and they reject political violence. The good news for us is that there are concrete things that you and I can do to move the country in a more positive direction. Starts with us to just 4 great ways for each of us to turn down the heat in this season and avoid escalation to political violence. 1, be aware of how emotions can distort our thinking. I know they do for me. Let's try not to equate the actions of individuals with entire political groups. Let's watch out for false information and conspiracy theories. When we see information that provokes anger and fear, those primal instincts I'm talking about that can lead us astray in this society, let's look again. Let's look into it more and ensure that it's true and that there's not some important nuance missing. And then finally, push back on divisive behavior. Look, this takes courage. There's been a lot of courage demonstrated over the history of this nation to get us to where we are today. And we need courage in ourselves now to get to the next 250 years of this country. In this case, we need to be courageous in criticizing divisive, dehumanizing rhetoric, especially among our political allies, because that is where we'll have the most influence and impact is with our own in-group. So let's step up among our friends and say, you know what? I don't think that's the productive way to move us forward and make us stronger as a nation.
We are talking with Pearce Godwin. He's the founder and CEO of the Listen First Project. Our discussion is about his organization's efforts to bridge the political divide. If you have a question or comment for him, you can start calling in now. The lines: Democrats 202-748-8000, Republicans 202-748-8001, and Independents 202-748-8002. And Pearce, you just talked about having courage to push back when we're having these conversations. For people, for individuals, where is the line between having a healthy political debate and toxic polarization?
That's such a great question, Tammy. Look, I think it is critical to our democratic republic that we vigorously contest ideas and ideologies and political preferences and policy prescriptions. That is the lifeblood of this country. So nobody wants to tamp that down. I think where we get into dangerous territory and self-destructive territory is when it becomes more about the person than the position. When we start robbing our fellow Americans of their dignity, when we start insulting their character, when we start dehumanizing them, that's where I think we've moved beyond a productive policy discussion and a vigorous, robust, yes, even heated political debate, which we need to have in this country. That's where we get into the toxicity, is the demonization across differences. And that's what I see taking us in a direction that no American of goodwill wants to go.
Let's bring our callers into the conversation. We'll start with Richard in Rural Hall, North Carolina on the Republican line. Good morning, Richard.
Good morning. Please don't cut me off. I got a few things to say. First thing is, the only violence being brought up is by the Democrats. Okay, do you remember the Summer of Love that they did? Do you? Do you remember all that violence? Did the Democrats spy on Trump's campaign? Did the Democrats put out a fake dossier about Russia and the media carried that for 3 years? You're talking all this. The only ones that are doing it is the Democrats. And you guys are some evil people, very evil. And I hope everybody.
We'll go on to Johnny in Daytona Beach, Florida on the Democrats line. Good morning, Johnny.
How you doing? Yeah, so I'm calling in with I think I have a question here. The division of America is due to, I think it's due to the news, the people that's doing the news. They're keeping stuff that they're not reporting. That I'd rather have a person that's a little senile than have a person that really just lies to everything. All the fact finders show that Trump lies all the time, but we don't report them. We rather talk about how old a guy is. And then another thing is that I'd rather have the truth than have somebody just lie to me and keep the people divisive. Well, even like the Summer of Love, that was due to too many cops killing black people, and they want to say it's the same as January 6th. It's not. That was a real protest. That wasn't something that was going against the government. And the Summer of Love is a whole different program. And then Trump has been lying about so many things. After you get him in office as a felon, that means Snoop Dogg can run. He's a felon. That means Lil Wayne can run as a felon. Everybody should start running as felons now because we don't need that no more. It's having an armed person in the White House.
Pearce, do you have a response for our caller?
Yeah, I do. Both of these callers touched on really critical dimensions of this problem. One is the perception gap that research shows we are just dead wrong about those people. And one of the most interesting facets of that research is that the more informed we are in the sense of following politics and following the news, the farthest off our perceptions of those people and what they believe are. It gets even more complex when you talk about meta misperceptions. We're in this loop where we are wrong about how those people, whoever they are for you, think about us. And that creates a vicious cycle. And also on the point of violence, that's been deeply caught in this perception gap. I want to share some fresh data with you all. Stephen Hawkins, director of research at More in Common, which you may be familiar with. More in Common conducted the seminal Hidden Tribes and Perception Gap studies, provided me with new unpublished public opinion data to share with you and your viewers this morning. Following the assassination attempt on President Trump, there is strong frustration among Americans with the media for fomenting and thriving off of fear and divisions. Both sides continue to vastly overestimate the other's support for political violence. Following the horrific shooting of last weekend, Democrats expect that about 4 in 10 Republicans believe, quote, violence against Democrats is now justified. But in fact, 9 in 10 Republicans reject that idea. The Polarization Research Lab previously found that Americans incorrectly think the other party's support for partisan murder is more than 20 times larger than it actually is. Democrats think 45% of Republicans support partisan murder, a view that is 21 times larger than the reality among Republicans. And meanwhile, Republicans think 42% of Democrats support partisan murder, a view that is 25 times larger than the reality. So while the share of Americans that support political violence is low, it's still representing millions of Americans. So the danger we face now as fellow Americans is a cascade of growth in support for violence out of a mistaken belief that either, one, a lot of people on my side are willing to fight, or two, a lot of people on the other team are going to be violent. Both of those are wrong, but are broadly held misperceptions. So it is absolutely critical today and in the weeks and months and years ahead to make clear that violence is broadly rejected across all spectrums of politics and any other dimension of difference. It's best done by elevating the voices of everyday people across that political spectrum who can forcefully say no. This is not who we are as Americans.
Let's hear from Roy in Wake Forest, North Carolina on the Republican line. Good morning, Roy.
Good morning. Thanks for this forum. I agree that people do not want violence. I'm a conservative Republican. I'm as far right as they get. I mean, I got a 4-by-8 foot Trump sign in my front yard right now for everybody to see. But I'm the last guy that wants to see any violence. But what I really called about was the media. You're right. We think that we all hate each other according to the media. And I want to give one very simple, great example. The debate a couple of weeks ago. Half of America, their head blew off because they had never seen Joe Biden in that shape before. But the other half that didn't blow off are conservative Republicans that get real news, not from CNN, MSNBC, regular radio and stuff like that. We all knew this guy was impaired. Who covered it up for 3.5 years plus? The left-wing media. You should talk about that just for a minute. Why did everybody go nuts after seeing Biden in that debate? He looked like a zombie. The Republicans knew that he's a puppet. But why did they react like, oh, my God?
Got your point, Roy. We'll get a response from Pearce.
Well, I'm loving all these calls from my fellow North Carolinians. I appreciate so much North Carolina representing this morning. Look, I began my career on Capitol Hill. There's a lot of politics that I love. And certainly, from the beginning of time, we've all had a political interest to elevate our assets and to accelerate and accentuate the flaws and liabilities of our opponents. I'm not going to make any comment on the specific merits or critiques of any individual candidate. That's not what my work is about. But I do think your caller from Wake Forest is making a critical point that kind of proves this idea of the balkanization of our media, right? The fact that, we have very few outlets like C-SPAN. I love being on this program, Washington Journal, because you are genuinely speaking to and engaging in the conversation folks from across the spectrum. How hard is that to find these days? We tend to be getting information from people who look like us and think like us and simply reinforce all the biases that I already have. And that can be nice and affirming, and is certainly more comfortable than challenging some of those other beliefs that are less resonant with who we are. But it doesn't do us any favors in sharing a reality as fellow Americans. And I think that's what the caller is really hitting on very well here. Is that we can see the same event, the same politician, the same phenomena in our country or around the world, and one person sees black and one person sees white, one person sees up and one person sees down. It is remarkable and terrifying. And there have been a number of events in recent years where that really struck me, where I understood fully, wow. We as fellow Americans are not seeming to live in the same universe of reality. Without me making any judgment on which reality is real, the media has so deeply segmented us and fractured us that indeed we can look at one event and have vastly different reactions, totally contradictory, but be equally held with conviction and with patriotism. It struck me over time that events and reactions to events that one group of people may see as the opposite of patriotism, an abomination, criminal, another group may have sincerely held beliefs and motivations. It may actually be their heartfelt patriotism and love for this country that is animating this same action. And until we start to slow down enough to listen with curiosity, to speak from our own experience, not just parroting what our favorite information outlets are sending our way, and to connect with respect, that chasm's not going anywhere. And I frankly don't know how we continue as a country as long as we are seeing things so radically differently, as long as we are perceiving the events around us from such vastly and contradictory perspectives. I don't know how we can move forward together. And that's where I think, look, politicians and media respond to incentives. It's really not that complicated. They respond to incentives. And so I think it's on us as voters and as media consumers to give them better incentives. But until we fix that problem, there's a really good way to gain a clearer, better, more well-rounded and accurate. We all want accurate information. None of us want to be misguided by our own biases or by people feeding us information that is designed to foment that fear and that animosity and that sense of threat. I don't think it's fun. I don't think many people enjoy feeling that way about their fellow Americans. And a really fantastic way to check those feelings and perhaps find that they aren't as well grounded as we may think is just spending time with our fellow Americans, spending time with those people. And it may be that they are not as scary, that they are not as threatening, that they are patriotic Americans, just as we like to think of ourselves. They may have similar experiences, they may have vastly different experiences, but with over 500 organizations and thousands of programs taking place in the Listen First Coalition and beyond in communities across America, I have yet to see an example where a human being did not enjoy and appreciate, did not find deeply refreshing and hope-giving an honest conversation with another human being. And believe it or not, it tends to be a vastly different picture than is painted by the media and that we might paint in our own minds. My friend Monica Guzman, who wrote an incredible book on this topic, talks about how anything that is underrepresented in our daily lives, any types of people, these groups who aren't really around us in our daily lives will tend to be overrepresented in our imagination. And that can become really scary. And we can perceive them as one monolith that is out to get us and out to defeat our own values and everything we hold dear. But in my experience, in the fellow Americans of all backgrounds and beliefs that I've talked to, it's not that scary out there. We're people. We're all human beings. We all have dignity. In my opinion, we're all created in the image of God. And the threat and the fear that is drummed up by politicians, by media, because we respond to it, we latch on to it, that's on us. That's not what I feel when I engage with fellow Americans. Those people are more like me than I realize.
Anthony in Sierra Vista, Arizona on the Democrats line. Good morning, Anthony.
Good morning. Thank you, Team C-SPAN. Well, you got another North Carolina person on the line.
All right.
First 24 years of my life in Fayetteville, North Carolina. Great people. Hey, I'm going to share with you three quick things. C-SPAN's always been great for letting me share a few things with them. Air Supply released a great song in 1982. Air Supply's a band, and that song was entitled Two Less Lonely People in the World. And that's where I first heard that song in North Carolina. And so what you were talking about, slowing down, and I write a lot. Here's a quote. As the world, human interaction speeds up and the way I think becomes faster, and we have to react faster to responses from others, he who has the ability to slow down or she who has the ability to slow down whoever it is will be the one who wins today's transition. And I reference that because back to the beginning, 2 less lonely people in the world. We don't hear ourselves. We are in a point where I believe everything you tell me. That means who's around me. And I don't believe anything you don't tell me. Your comments?
Thanks so much for the call. Yes, we've got to slow down. We get ourselves so wrapped up, especially when events are happening so fast. I mean, and there's a trend now, and I'm part of it, of turning down the notifications on my phone. It is overwhelming. There is so much happening in our communities, in our states, in our countries, all around the world, that we have an opportunity for those base instincts to be triggered every second of every day, for me to get into that fight or flight mode. And I've learned personally, and it sounds like you have as well, that just slowing down, taking a beat, can change everything, can change how we perceive the world around us, how we perceive our own lives, how we perceive our neighbors and our fellow Americans. I think it's absolutely critical. I think you are so wise to point to that, because when we don't slow down, when we see something happen and just react, we are going to tend to react from that place of fight or flight, from that place of fear and a sense of threat. And far too often, especially these days, in light of the many dimensions contributing to this toxic polarization, the threat we see is in our fellow Americans. And we are jumping to conclusions. We are assuming motives. We are not suspending judgment. We are not leading with any sort of grace or benefit of the doubt. We are getting in a crouch for battle. Every time the next thing happens, every time the next thing is said, that's what our brains do. And I think you're right on. The single best thing we can do to combat that is to slow down. I would argue that the next best thing we can do is be curious, a little more thoughtful, and if at all possible, engage with a human being, not with our phones, not with our screens. Engage with our neighbors. See what they're thinking. See what they're like. That'll help us slow down. I think that'll enrich us and give us a greater and more realistic sense of the world around us. And I'd be willing to bet, give us a sense that we're a lot more in this together than we feel like when everything's coming at us so fast and when everything feels so dire and so existential.
Let's hear from Steve in Kentucky on the Republican line. Good morning, Steve.
Hey, how's it going? Thanks for taking my call. Things in this country are dividing us for a reason. They're big issues. The issues are the debt. Should we keep printing money like it just grows on trees, or should we be fiscally responsible? People have big different ideas on that. Marriage, should it be between a man and a woman? People have strong ideas. Transgender athletes, men competing against women's sports. The list goes on and on. These are big divisions. How are you going to get people to come together when the whole thing that they're thinking is you're destroying this country, and the other side says the same thing, and we both hold our convictions so strongly that there's really nothing that's going to change our minds to come to the other side, whichever side we're on. How do we get past that? Or does one side have to win and say, okay, this is best for the country, this is how we're going to do it, like it or leave? I don't know. You tell me.
Such a great and important point. Look, I want to be very clear. I and nobody I know is suggesting that anybody tamp down their convictions on any of these issues. We're not papering over real differences in opinion and in values that animate these robust debates. I think it would be impossible and also unwise and un-American to ask anybody to change their sincerely held views. That's why we have a democratic republic, is to settle those things peacefully in conversation and in the political process. So diminishing anybody's stances and positions on any of the issues you outlined is not my suggestion. And again, I don't even think is desirable. I will note that there's an incredible amount of research, encouraging research, that demonstrates, again, going back to that perception gap, that we tend to dramatically exaggerate that gap, the degree of distance there is on any of the issues, even those hot issues that you pointed to. We tend to be closer together than we think we are. Certainly a heck of a lot closer together than the media or our political actors would suggest we are. And it takes engaging with one another, engaging in conversation, talking to some of those people who oppose us on an issue, and realize that, hey, there might be some common ground here. And far more often than not, there is. So that's on the positions. Continue to debate them, continue to vigorously debate them, but let's do so together as opposed to lobbing grenades from our corner to your corner to the other corner. That is not going to get us anywhere. It's going to continue to have us in stalemate and to create the toxicity that exists on these divisive issues. But that's not the key. The key is how we're looking at the people, not the positions. And you're so right in this sense that they are out to destroy me. They are out to destroy my views and my values. We have to get beyond that sense that our fellow Americans are our enemy if we hope for this country to succeed. It's just that simple. I don't know how the United States of America finds a way forward together if we remain convinced by the lie. It is a lie. We talk to our fellow Americans and we realize that the vast majority of our fellow Americans are not out to get us. They're not out to destroy us. We have all gotten caught in this toxic polarization vortex that turns each one of us into the worst version of ourselves, that leads us to demonize our fellow Americans. That's not how normal people, how good, patriotic Americans look at their neighbor, look at their fellow human beings. It is a lie that we are being fed, and it's a lie that we've got to overcome by engaging with one another more, by diversifying the sources we're getting for information. So that's how. And listen, I think it's on each one of us to look in the mirror and be the first mover if we have to be in our circles. I think if we sit around waiting for those people to come with an olive branch, especially if our perception of how they look at us is being filtered and distorted through the lens of media or politics, we're going to be sitting around for a long time, and it's become more and more dangerous place for this country and for our families and our communities. So we got to demonstrate some patriotic courage ourselves and say, you know what? I am going to turn off those messages that I feel are eliciting so much fear and animosity in me. I just want to check it, just out of my own integrity. I want to make sure I'm not being fed a lie. And this guy Pearce is saying that maybe I am. So let me check it out, Let me check it out and go engage with some people who think differently than I do on a given issue. Go engage with some people who vote differently than I do, who could not possibly see things differently than I do. And let me see, are they really out to get me? Do they really wish me harm? Or are they just coming from a different place? And if we were able to engage honestly, out of goodwill, listen with curiosity, speak from our own experiences, and connect with respect, boy, that is a vastly different picture of the dynamics at play between us as fellow Americans. So again, have no interest and think it would frankly be a disservice to this democratic republic for any of us to say, oh, I'm just supposed to surrender my views on this position. Not at all. And one final point, this idea that does one side have to win? When I think about this mission, when I think about turning down the heat and finding a way forward together, it is very common for folks to say, oh, hell no, not with those people. And look, I've got a lot of emotion around this. I love this country and I love my fellow Americans, and I want to see us stronger together. But I also just go to pragmatism. What's the end game? If not that, what's the end game? And you, sir, touched one that I've shorthanded as delusion. Delusion, doom, duck, and dash are my shorthands for the objections that I've heard to turning down the heat and finding a way forward together. Delusion is this idea that seems to animate many of us that somehow, some way, we are going to defeat those people. We are going to destroy their ideology. We are no longer going to have to deal with them or their values. We're going to win the next election. We're going to win the next debate, and that's it. We will stand victorious. With all due respect, I think it's delusional. Look at this country. Look at the rich variety of backgrounds and beliefs. That is just not going to happen. I mean, look at the last several decades. There is going to be no ultimate victory for one side over the other. That's not how we get out of this mess. Just to do the other three quickly, doom is folks who say, you know what? All hope is lost. All right? We are irrevocably destined for another civil war. I don't know about you all, but I am not going to sit back and passively resign myself to that fate. Duck, look, I got to be honest with you all. I am tempted by duck every day. But what I mean by that is just shut it all out. Just remove ourselves from the conversation. Hunker down with our closest friends and family, because all that is too destructive and it's too hot and it's too upsetting. I get the impulse to just duck down and cut it all out of our lives. But there's no way we move forward as a healthy and prosperous society, as a United States of America, if we are further isolating and cloistering ourselves from one another. And then finally, dash, delusion, doom, duck, and dash. They're folks who are ready to go, like physically go, and have a plan to leave this country as things get worse. That's not what we want. That is not what we want in this exceptional nation, is people feeling like they've got to leave because we can't figure it out and find a way forward together. So I think the much better, the much more hopeful path forward is to listen with curiosity, to speak from our own experience, to connect with respect, and deal with our differences and deal with our debates and disagree better as fellow Americans and as human beings.
Pearce, people who are listening to this conversation and are thinking, I do want to engage with people who may have difference of opinions, where do they start? Where can they go to find these coalitions and these projects to connect with those kinds of people?
Yeah. Most simply, I'd love for you all to go to listenfirstproject.org right now and then join the movement by signing the Listen First pledge. If you do so, I will personally email you and connect you with an effort that fits your interests. So that's the simplest step, is get plugged in by going to listenfirstproject.org, joining the movement, sign the Listen First pledge, and let me connect you directly. But also, I want to share several other quick actions. We've talked about those 3 tips for your daily life. Listen with curiosity, speak from your own experience, connect with respect. I'd highly suggest folks follow Starts With Us on social media for stellar content and inspiration. Watch the film Dialogue Lab America from Idios Institute. Read Tanya Israel's fantastic new book, Facing the Fracture. Go to trustmap.org. This thing is so cool. By Weave, to see how your neighborhood stacks up on trust and how it can build. You can discover upcoming events across the whole coalition on Citizen Connect. And again, if you only do one thing, go to listenfirstproject.org and sign that Listen First pledge and let me personally reach out to you and plug you in to this hopeful movement. If I may, I want to give just a few more examples among elected officials and among young people of the incredible work that these heroes across the Listen First Coalition are doing. The Common Ground Scorecard is a place where you can go and see how those elected officials, folks in the Senate, in the House, our governors, those in the White House, are doing on this mission. Are they seeking common ground? The top scorers with 110 on the Common Ground Scorecard are Congressman Mike Lawler, Don Davis, Don Bacon, Susie Lee, and Senator Maggie Hassan. Disagreebetter.us, the National Governors Association led by Utah Governor Spencer Cox, a Republican who just ended his chairmanship of the NGA, led a Disagree Better initiative, and they got so many of our nation's governors to record bipartisan videos calling us all to our better angels, calling us to disagree better. Highly recommend checking out and sharing those videos of our governors talking about what I and your viewers want to see happen in this country. I want y'all to know about the Future Caucus. The Future Caucus is activating young legislators to bridge the partisan divide and to lead a new era of collaborative governance. They've got their Future Summit next week. It's convening hundreds of these young lawmakers who are putting country over party. In Congress, the Building Civic Bridges Act has been introduced by a bipartisan group of lawmakers led by Derek Kilmer. That would provide federal funding to expand bridge building efforts that strengthen our country. And then North Carolina Reps Caleb Rudow and Jared Lowry recently did bipartisan skydiving, taking this patriotic mission to a whole new level. Finally, I want you to know about young people getting engaged in this work. That gives me so much hope, as the American Exchange Project is sending high school seniors on a free week-long trip in the summer after they graduate to an American hometown that is radically different from their own. This summer, 500 kids are taking 63 exchange trips across 36 states. And AEP, as their founder, David McCullough, says, aims for this senior exchange to become as normal as the senior prom. Look, we've all seen the conflict taking place on campuses across America in recent months. Bridge USA has more than 10,000 students engaged in bridging divides on campus across 75 college and high school chapters. And finally, Heterodox Academy has created a new student orientation program based on Rob Feld's new film, Jesters and Fools. It features top comedians addressing toxic polarization. You know, as I was talking about with skydiving, with Raft for America, with this film, Jesters and Fools, we got to slow down. We got to lighten up and learn to laugh and learn to enjoy each other and learn to have fun. And there's so many great examples of that taking place. But again, if I could leave folks with just a couple things, it'd be to practice these 3 tips in your daily life. Listen with curiosity, speak from your own experience, and connect with respect. Hop on listenfirstproject.org, sign the pledge, join the movement, and I'll reach out and I will help you get plugged into the effort that best suits you and your interest. There are so many incredible opportunities. And my last thought is that I think we got to slow down. We got to slow down, as the caller suggested. I think we should each look in the mirror and ask ourselves a pivotal question. Are we going to fight against our fellow Americans or fight for America? If enough of us choose to see dignity across differences and seek to find a way forward together, America's future will be bright.
Pearce, we want to get in one last quick call from your neighbor in South Carolina, Suzanne, on the Democrats line. Hi, Suzanne. Quick call. We are short on time.
Okay, I'll keep it real short. Quick question. So I am a clinical social worker with a master's degree, been practicing for over 25 years. I see a lot of people in the LGBTQ community. They come to me feeling marginalized, severely marginalized, because their life is not respected. They don't feel safe in their community, especially in very red states. There's current legislation that will criminalize their behavior. By criminalizing their behavior, incarcerating them, that is another form of violence. I just would like to dig deep a little bit and think about how these children I'm seeing, these teenagers, are to respond to someone who does not see them as equal.
Pearce, quick response for Suzanne.
Yeah. Thank you, Suzanne. We're not seeing each other and we're not treating each other as human beings. And, there's conversation to be had around various policies and around various ways to deal with really difficult, complex issues. But for me, the starting point is seeing the dignity in our fellow Americans, seeing the dignity in our fellow Americans of all backgrounds and beliefs and orientations and lifestyles. I think that's where it starts. And it's on us, as I said, that thing that's in all of our bathrooms, that mirror, is the only place I know to start. And there may be people who are not ready, are not coming from a place of goodwill, don't have the disposition, the love for their fellow man at this point in time to engage productively in some of these really challenging, really personal conversations. But based on my experience and my years as a human being, I think when we do engage with one another, when we listen with curiosity, when we really want to understand somebody's life, where they're coming from, what makes them tick, how they grew up, values they hold, what faith they may hold, it's a game changer. It's a whole different ball game. It's so easy for us to spout off and for us to spew vitriol from behind our political positions, from behind our keyboards. And sometimes that hurts. That hurts really bad. And nobody should have to feel that. Nobody should ever, in the United States of America, the most materially prosperous nation on the planet, nobody should have to feel the pain of that dehumanization. But we're doing that to each other. That is what we're doing to each other right now. And we have got to stop. We've got to stop, or we're going to continue hurting each other as individuals, and we are going to destroy this country that we love.
Pearce Godwin, he is the founder and CEO of the Listen First Project. You can find their work online at listenfirstproject.org. Pearce, thank you so much for joining us and for this conversation today.
Tammy, thanks for having me.